Welcome, everyone, to ReaderCon's The Eminence of Style. We're going to talk for about an hour about what the words mean when we put them together. We're going to be digging into how style affects story and vice versa. But first, I'd like to have all my panelists introduce themselves. Please tell us a bit about your work and what attracted you to the topic. I guess I'll call on you because Zoom can shuffle us for each other. Glenn?
Hi, I'm Glenn Hirschberg. Specialize, I suppose, in ghost stories, although have written a 10th book coming out in a month or so. And I've also been a teacher at the graduate school, college, and high school level for about 25 years. And this conversation about how to help people find their style, discover it, hone it, and grow into something that is also professional, but is them, has been central to my work. So I was thrilled to see this topic come up.
And Tracy?
Hey everybody, I'm Tracy Micah. I'm an editor. I've been an editor my entire career, I would say most of my life. Started out in magazines in New York, working on everything from Nickelodeon Magazine to Men's Fitness to Business Week. Whole different set of styles for each one, let me just tell you. And also reading slush. So I was a slush reader for McSweeney's and also a literary agent in New York. Again, style sort of came into play into that quite a bit because you're always looking for the right fit, right? So right now in my day job, I'm an editor. I also do some writing and also write and edit at night too. So I write mostly nonfiction when I do that. So Glenn, I'm very happy to hear that you write ghost stories because those are also a favorite of mine. So awesome. Very happy to be here. And I just am really, really interested in the question of style as far as what brought me here. So it's something I work with day in and day out, and I find sort of endlessly interesting.
Awesome.
Glad to be here.
And then we are blessed with not one, but two guests of honor on this panel. Our first blessing, Ursula?
Yes. Blessing, that sounds so a lot to live up to. I'm Ursula Vernon. I write for kids as Ursula Vernon, for adults as T. Kingfisher. I have written horror, fantasy romance, middle grade, lots of things, and comics. And style, the panel apparently started with a quote of mine from Twitter. And God, I wish I could remember what I was talking about when I said that, but I will improvise something and it will be clever, damn it.
And then the guest of honor splendor continues with Jeff.
I'm Jeff Ford. I write fiction. My last couple of books are Big Dark Hole, which just recently came out from Small Beer. The best of takes in about, I think, like 25 years of short stories. That's from PS. And the last novel was Ahab's Return, which comes out from HarperCollins. I live in Ohio. I've been teaching for, I think, close to 40 years now, and at college level. And I now just teach part-time at Ohio Wesleyan, which is out here in Ohio where I live now.
Fantastic. And I am your handy-dandy moderator, John Wiswell. I am a writer largely of short fiction. I just won the Nebula Award for Best Short Story, believe last month.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. It rocked my world, I have to say. And I'm nominated for several other awards later this year. I have a deep and twisted relationship with style and what styles I can attain and what I can bend them into doing for audiences. And I'm always experimenting with what I can make the styles that I have in my reach do. And that's why I was super excited to be able to be part of this conversation. And what better way to start this conversation than to ask Ursula what she meant like a year ago on Twitter. When you said, I believe, at some point I stopped reading books for the plots. I am really only interested in the writing style and to a very lesser extent, the world.
Yeah, I said that. Go me. I think what I was probably thinking was that there are really, what's the joke? There's only 6 basic plots. And depending on the genre that you read,
There's only 2.
quite possibly. Depending on the genre you read, that can be even more sort of limited. I read a lot of romance, and the plot is, while there's lots of infinite variations, and I in no way mean to degrade the complexity of the genre, the plot is still basically 2 people fall in love, overcome conflicts, get together. If I read murder mysteries, the plot is always somebody dies, and you have to figure out who, and there's probably going to be some false leads along the way. The plots, it's rare that a plot comes along that I go, whoa, damn, I did not see that coming. I'm trying to think of one. Ancillary Justice surprised me. That was not a, I had never seen the sentient remnant of all this. The character, basically the main character, without getting spoilers, was, I was like, damn, never saw that one before. But after a point, if you read enough, you've seen almost all the plots before. So you're very excited when there's a new one along and you're wowed by it. But it becomes, who do I enjoy reading, or what do I enjoy reading that stylistically is can take the plot that's is probably not going to, be mind-blowing and still make it a really good experience for the reader, or something that sticks in my head. And a lot of that is, characters. And I feel my initial quote probably dismissed the importance of characters, but there are a lot of books that I will read a sample and be like, nope, can't handle the style. Your characters are probably fine, but if I have to read another 6 pages of this, I'm out. So yeah, a style can definitely be a make or break thing. I think more of a break than I don't know, somehow make too. Because then I stop and think about it. I was reading Wodehouse recently, and I am not reading Wodehouse because I care about the plot. Like, yes, it's a hilarious series of misadventures, but it is not I am not deeply emotionally invested in what happens to the silver cow creamer. I just want to see, I just want to be in that world with and reading that language and being excited by the use of words and the characters running around. So
I think even when Waugh said about Wodehouse, somewhat cuttingly, but I think he was more right than that world can never stale, because of the language, because of the words.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, like what you said, I used to do this traveling ghost story tour performance thing in the fall with Pete Atkins and Dennis Etchison, which was both basically an excuse for the 3 of us to drive around and have this kind of conversation. And at some point, one of us, and I honestly don't remember which one, came up with the Strunk and White version of all the smart things you just said, Ursula, which said, it's the storyteller, not the story. And I still believe that most of the time.
Yeah, well, I mean, I look at, I once tried to explain the book Hogfather by Terry Pratchett to someone, and I made the mistake of trying to explain the plot, which is they're trying to assassinate Santa Claus by stealing the Tooth Fairy's teeth to do sympathetic magic. And the person I was explaining to looked at me and said, I'm not going to lie, that is one of the stupidest plots I've ever heard. And I'm like, in retrospect, yes, but it works really well.
Right. I mean, it's harder to pitch execution than premise.
Yeah.
Right. Like that. And that's something that I run into a lot because, like I love Pratchett. I love Adams, but like, what is if you don't already love Hitchhiker's Guide, what is the Hitchhiker's Guide? Well, a guy's planet gets demolished and he's kind of stuck, but he's got a towel. It's tough. It's tough outside of execution, but strong style still has a gravitational pull on readers. So I think, Ursula, you did a fantastic job of unpacking that the quote that set us all off here. I'm curious, Glenn, you weighed in a little bit. Other folks, how do you generally feel about style? Is it something that is an essential element in drawing you in?
Well, one of the in one sense, style for me is voice. When I understand the voice of the story, then I understand how it's going to be written, and the voice dictates the style. And it could be different every time, but one of the things I do with my students, and I'm talking about composition students, is we learn how to manipulate sentence structures, with introductory phrases and parenthetical phrases and gerund phrases and all this stuff. And if you could do that, you do it so that you can capture the music of your own idiosyncratic authorial voice, So if you have that at your disposal, because when freshmen come in and they write, it's usually subject, verb, subject, verb, subject, verb, subject, verb, where the rhythm of it becomes incantatory to the point where it overtakes what the meaning of the words are, So if you can manipulate it, when you sit in a room and listen at a party, just listen to people speak, their voices modulate, go up and down, use short sentences, long sentences. So if you can capture your authorial voice, and I know it, once students do this, their writing improves like amazing amounts, because they become conscious almost of that they're telling a story. Whereas a lot of times students are not conscious of what they're putting on paper. And I don't mean that as a joke. I mean it literally, so that ability to capture the voice that I don't know, and where the voice comes from, I have no idea. It's just magic to me. So, you capture the voice though, and that will dictate the way the story is going to be told. And then, I just go with it. I mean,
Going to Tracy.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. First, I just want to say that I love the point about when you're explaining a story to someone, trying to get them to go for it. Sometimes style is the thing and plot is not the thing, and that's totally fine and great too. It's kind of interesting. I really gravitate to really plain language, the whole Strunk Away thing of needless words. I was just rereading to prep for this panel, Double Indemnity again, and just I feel like a appreciation of style is so subjective in some ways, what we're all drawn to. And that is just really, really plain. It breaks a lot of the Strunk and White rules in the elements of style, but it is very much about omitting needless words, and in some ways subject, verb. And for some reason, I just really fall in love with that and gravitate to it every time. So, sorry, I realize I'm possibly not answering the question that you asked, but it's just something that I've been thinking about. So,
in a way, Tracy, I think you're bringing up the dilemma for writers and for anybody who's trying to help a writer develop a voice, whether you're an editor, a friend, a teacher, whatever. Jeff, you said a word that I was laughing when you said this because it's a word I use. You're trying to get them to hear their own music.
Yeah.
You're looking for the phrase. I mean, I feel like what you said is voice, style. And sometimes I think those words are interchangeable, sometimes not entirely. But like omit all necessary words. Really great guideline. But the trick buried in that is necessary for what? And what's necessary, because it isn't always the least possible words. That's a different thing. And so I think I've had students who, like everybody needs to, I think it's Robert Graves, the clarity above all. Yeah, that 98% of the time, yes. But other than that, it's not always like necessary to do a mood, necessary to capture a specific feeling. Sometimes that isn't the least possible words. Sometimes it is. And so I feel like to read well and write well, you have to be able to hear the beat on the page in front of you. And then when you've got students, a lot of times, I teach creative writing mostly these days, but it's the same stuff that you're listening. Often I don't realize on the page until I step back from it and think, ooh, right there. That's the thing. That's the voice that this story needs. And I just wanted to throw one other thing in, and then I will cede the floor. But John, you were talking about, style. We've all been talking about, Ursula at the very beginning, is style the thing or is it voice? Just this past weekend, Martin Amis, who I go so back and forth with between wanting to punch the computer and just applaud when I read him, it depends. But he was asked again about some inflammatory quote he made about J.M. Coetzee, the very celebrated South American and very fine, I think, South American novelist.
South African.
Yeah. So he said about him, oh, I don't think he's not a great writer to me because that style is dead. The words are inert on the page. And I disagree with that. But then he said, the thing is, style isn't something you add later. It's inextricable from whatever it is you do. And that I do ultimately believe in, that the writing that matters, you can feel that, right words, right order. You can feel that this got down on the page and the way it's being told you is the right music for this story, I think. And so the trick is, yes, all these rules, but then whatever new rules this new piece of writing is making for itself. And that's where this gets really interesting to me.
Now you brought up the mantra of omit needless words, and it's in our panel description, and we might as well take a swing at this pinata. What we've touched on, and Glenn in particular have touched on, that words are needless for some styles and some stories, but not for others. As a writer and an editor and a mentor, I have tried to be very conscious of when I can't give good feedback for something, because it's not that story is dead and the language is inert. It's inert for me. I can't give you the feedback that you need on this piece of work because for whatever reason, I'm not a part of the crucial audience, or I can't see where you're going. I think I've become a little bit better peer to my fellow writers by helping point them in the direction of people who probably can help them hone. Because if it were left up to me, there are many best-selling and award-winning books that would have never seen the light of day. And so thank goodness I'm not the sun god of publishing. Instead, you need to know your role and your place and who you can assist and also who you can ask to help assist you and hone your voice. So I'd like to pass off to the group. What does omit needless words mean for your work? What does it mean to cut and to carve for your styles? I'm not going to say style because some of you have written things in multiple styles. That's the response you want as a moderator. Let me tell you right there. I can tell I'm really doing a bang up job.
Needless words are the ones I don't use.
Yeah.
Basically, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Now, would you say that you don't use them at first, or do you leave them on the cutting floor?
I mean, there's times when I go through it, every time I go back to a piece, if it's longer, I go back every day and back up a little and then go through it again and, cut out the crap. But I mean, I can't think of anything that's a useless word. It might come in handy somewhere. You never know. I mean, I think that term is kind of BS, actually. Useless words, needless words. Yeah, I don't know about that term. I think that just sounds like one of those MFA saws that they give you. You know what I mean? I don't think people should think about that.
I think Tracy, when Tracy was talking about James M. Cain and the way the way that music works, I think for me, Jeff, you may have just hit the nail on the head, and thank you. Like, to me, omit needless words means cut the crap.
Yeah.
And all of us are trying to find, okay, you're writing this down, but yeah, you go back and that isn't this story, that isn't this story. But I think getting hung up on that can be really dangerous when you're trying to write.
Absolutely.
Get the story out and let the story find its rhythm. And then you trim away, when you're going through, you trim away the distraction, which is a really important step. But I don't know, I think you can, it's actually one of the biggest dangers I've found in MFA programs, in teaching, in editing people. If you focus too much on don't use needless words, you can stop yourself writing really fast.
I generally, put in more adverbs than I probably need and go back and cut a chunk of them. But that doesn't mean that, the go through and take out 2/3 of your adjectives. I'm like, no, I mean, most of them are probably fine. There's a couple I'm like, yeah, I got like 3 close to each other. Let me see which one I really need. But I tend to be pretty wordy. So I'm writing novels, not haikus. So there's a limit to how many how much I will chop in the name of style.
Well, there's ticks too. Like I know Ellen Datlow sent me this story back. I sent her, which she was going to publish, but she goes, Jeff, there's like 120 theirs in here. You
I
gotta
forgot that
get
about
rid of
that.
some of those theirs.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the hell is this about? I think I'm losing my mind, But yeah, sometimes there's something about a story that calls up the use of one word over and over again. It might be trying to tell you something, but with that one, I couldn't figure out what the hell it was. Although I do think a lot about location in stories,
Hmm.
So
I had a problem once a book came back and the editor was like, okay, I didn't actually notice this the first time, so obviously it's not that glaring on the first read, but during this section, you used the word stone 96 times. And I'm like, okay, but there's only so many. She's wandering around on a beach full of small rocks. I have rocks, I have pebbles, I have stone. There's only so much I can do here. So we went through and tried to change various things into rock and pebble. And I could just watching the track changes. Like at the beginning, it started with, it seems like they're using the word stone too much. And then by the end of that section, the editor was like, I know you are an intelligent woman with a huge vocabulary. Why is the word stone here again? I am going to throw myself in this.
Ursula, you know who's good with that? Cormac McCarthy and not No Country for Old Men, the other one, Blood Meridian. He's got 1 million words for stones. It blew my mind because I run into that same thing that you're talking about. But he never runs out of scree and all these other like loose pebble words and everything. I'm super impressed by that. I'm sorry.
Geology language is very important. I did a whole
Yeah.
comic with that and made some geologists very happy.
You two have knocked something loose for me in that I feel like part of my development as a writer and the development of many writers around me is learning where your style becomes redundancy. What you do too often. For instance, like my stories are full of insecurity and surprise and hedging things, such that the word but is just like a quarter of my word count sometimes. It's a nightmare. And I remember valiantly slashing so many versions of but, and then noticing that the word although had risen greatly in usage throughout the document. And because those sorts of expressions of insecurity and surprise and learning were so integral to the way that I was telling the story, and that I was potentially going to burn readers out if I did it too much in short order, but that it was integral. And so I was trying to like push back from redundancy into where it's just a successful stylistic zone. I hadn't thought about it like that until this conversation. That is enlightening.
I tend to write very practical characters who are, and I've been accused of this many times. The characters like, well, that just happened. All right, someone's gonna have to deal with that. And even when I've tried to write very flighty characters, I get told how practical they are, and I'm like, okay, so that because they did not immediately run to do the most stupid possible thing under the circumstances, they are a very practical character. Got it. But everybody's dialogue starts with well, such and such. Even internal narrative starts with well, and so I had to go through the word well, comma, a few zillion times if I see I'm using it too much.
Definitely dialogue's one of the places where you do a lot of cutting, Rarely are you adding, but a lot of cutting, I find, with it,
Yeah. I try to, if I can't excise a tick, I try to give it to a character. Like, okay, well, if this is going to keep happening in dialogue, then Sam says well all the time. It's his thing. See, it's his thing.
Same time, it's so tricky. It's a balance because, Jeff used the word tick, and, everybody's giving examples of these things that you notice. But like John, you were talking about that insecurity in your work. I am sure that is central to the flavor of your work. And so making sure you're still hearing the music, like another of those writing truisms that has its truth, but that I hate, is that kill your darlings phrase. Because while I get the intent and that's important, they're my darlings for a reason. And I have never understood why writers alone of all the professions, we're not allowed to actually read something we wrote and say, hey, that's not bad. Like,
John Crowley has a great essay on that, Not Killing Your Darlings.
Yeah.
He did a great job. It was in Harper's Magazine a while ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a children's book actually where we had to get it down under a certain length because kids' books tend to be fairly short, and they were like, this one's running long, you know, and I was like, okay, well, if you really want, I can admit that this entire sequence here of like 2 chapters could be replaced with a hand wave, and it involved a heroic goldfish, and the editor and my agent both came back and were like, you do not touch that goldfish. They're like, no, the goldfish stays. I'm like, okay, wow, I was that expected. I was trying to be good and kill my darling, but yeah, no.
That should be the name of a panel at some point.
The
The goldfish stays. Don't kill the goldfish.
It's great.
I will just say, like, on behalf of all editors, I apologize for making your lives hard, but I feel like I've been on the other
from embarrassing ourselves in front of the readers, and that's very important.
I feel like I've been on the other side too, where like I've seen a piece, never seen it before, I'm sort of coming into it fresh, and I will see words repeated over and over and over again. And I sit there and ask myself, is there a reason for it? What is it doing in the story if we do this? Are there ways around it? Is it really distracting when I see that? I mean, I have that in my day job all the time. I work for a management consulting firm. Please don't fall asleep on me. But there's a lot of working with writers and sort of figuring out why they're using the language that they're using.
Mhm.
So if you're coming into it cold, I will just say that sometimes that can be a process. So
And Tracy,
just
for
wanted
what
to
it's
mention
worth,
that.
I'm a huge believer in the editorial process. And as a writer, if you find someone, whether they are, have the editor title, or you're, in my case, you're married to your best editor, which is, sometimes bruising on the marriage, but really good for my work. That those are incredibly valuable people, and someone who can, do the push pull with you, like Ursula, what you were talking about you looking hard enough at your work to say, well, I could, and then an editor who knows when to say the goldfish stays. That's unbelievably
Yes.
valuable, and I feel like that's part of, for all of us, finding the music and finding.
If I give one piece of advice, if I give any at all, it's usually work with good editors.
Yeah.
That's basically the secret. Like, people ask you, what's the secret to getting published or writing? Work with good editors.
Find people
Absolutely.
who do well and keep them. Yeah.
That in particular, yeah, and like and it's not just your editor at a publishing house. Like, looking for the people who give you the useful feedback in your life. They can be invaluable. They can save a story, or they can save a story from me. That's happened before. Really interesting question in chat here from LA Cav. Would reading purely or primarily for style mean that you are starting with a good story and that good story is a given? Or can we enjoy writing style alone with a bad story? As a reader, LA Cav is unsure. And as a writer, I am not entirely sure. I have the opinion, though, that if you're being carried by voice or by style, the primacy of plot is reduced, that it doesn't have to do all of the work. And I don't think it's necessarily good or bad story, so much as story is doing less of the weight lifting in the fiction. And some people, I have liked things for voice and character where other people hated it because the plot was bad to them. But I'm curious, what about you folks?
I think, yeah, I don't know if I'd say good or bad story versus like complex or slight story, like going back to Wodehouse. Those are very slight plots for the most part. And it's, so you're not reading for that because the voice is doing 98.5% of the heavy lifting on that one. There are some authors where the voice is sufficiently invisible, I want to say, that if the story has to do a lot of work, because, and not to say an invisible voice is bad in any way, that's something you probably ascribe to, and if you're writing like thrillers or something where you really want the plot. that said, there are in thrillers specifically, there are ones where the plot is definitely bad and unrealistic, and you're like, okay, no amount of time I want to spend with these characters is going to save the fact that that is not how physics works. And at that point, I feel like it's almost like a really bad action movie that has one great character in it,
Mm.
and you're like, okay, yes, on the one hand, Alan Rickman is in this movie and he is just chewing the scenery and doing great. It's still not a good movie, but I'll watch it just for Alan Rickman.
I can enjoy style for itself. I can enjoy a really good plot, but I go back to that thing about, I think the best stories guide the style and vice versa. And I think I'm a greedy reader. Our time is short. I want stuff that has it, that has all of it. And so can I enjoy a book where I feel like, okay, that didn't really come together, but boy, there were some pretty sentences. Sure, I can, but it isn't going to last with me the way that, but the converse is also true. But for me, the best stuff that I read, the music is central. It's all wound together with the story that it's telling, and that's the work I tend to come back to and appreciate the most, which is incredibly difficult, of course, and it's what we're all shooting for all the time. But that's what I'm shooting for when I read and when I write.
I mean, I don't think any author is going out there going, my voice is so amazing that I can
No, of course,
crap sack
sure hope not.
make it work.
They're inextricably intertwined to me. I can't separate it. I mean, if it's a good story, it must mean that the style's good, the story's good, it's all working. That's all I know. I mean, I can't really separate them out. I know people whose styles that I admire, that kind of stuff. And I don't even, sometimes I don't know if I would read the whole book, but I like reading some of the pages, of it, or just reading their style. And most of the time with those people, I could read a whole book by them, by those writers. But yeah, they're totally inextricably intertwined. I wouldn't even know how to separate them.
Yeah.
I think that there are a few authors, and I'm going to be nice and not name names because it would be unkind, where I don't like their style, but I have continued reading one of their books because before I was partway through and was like, nope, just want to launch everybody in here into the sun. They managed to hook me on something. And in science fiction in particular, if you've got really good aliens, I will put up with a lot of crap because it is so hard.
There is something to be said for that.
Yeah, I will be like, hate the narrator, hate the idea. Your aliens are so good. I'm gonna keep plowing through. Oh, it's physically painful, but tell me what the aliens are doing.
But in science fiction, let's face it, Asimov can't read them. Heinlein can't read them. Even Ursula Le Guin is too distant for me. I really feel distant from her writing, although I admire her. I think she was a great woman, but her style, it seems like really distant and cold to me. And I know other people have a different take on it, but some of those early science fiction writers were like fucking stale, man. Asimov, certainly.
I'm with you.
Two things. One, Ursula, what you're saying, it's true, but Jeff, right, that genre, the one that's really hitting me, sticking with me right now is the Martha Wells Murderbot stuff, because it's so human and so alive and so funny, and it has so much voice, and it's got cool aliens. And I feel like, okay, that's the whole thing. Give me that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, but there's only so many Murderbot books, so that after a point we have to go read something else.
Yeah,
I found this with Philip K. Dick too. Oh, I mean, I read this book. I picked up this book, first one I read by him, Time Out of Joint. I was like, that's a stupid fucking title, right? But really, I think it's from Shakespeare even, But I started reading, I was like, why am I even reading this thing? And then I plowed through that one. I picked up another one. I plowed through that one. And there's something about that style where you could point to any place in it and say, this is pretty hackneyed right here or whatever. But when you're deep in reading it, it just goes by and it's beautiful. You know what I mean? The story is there all the time. So I don't know how, how he did that, but it worked really well, I thought.
And see, this is a case of individual preference coming out because I would rather chew ground glass than read Philip K. Dick. But I love the plots. Like I love the movie. Every time they make a movie out of a Philip
Yeah.
K. Dick book or story, I usually am right there because the plot will be good and tight, and the fact that all of Dick's characters are terrible, hateable people that I would never spend any time with whatsoever. The actors can make them all extremely compelling and fun and to be around. And I'm like, yes, okay, as long as someone is handling the humans who is not Philip K. Dick, this is a great story. That's just a personal preference, possibly because my ex-husband made me read Valis one time, and I've never
Yeah.
quite forget him.
There's an element of personal preference in all of this. And like,
Yeah.
interested to hear Tracy from the editorial side, although I do feel like most of the time that old useless truism that is probably the most true, which is I know what good writing is when I see it, because it can be very different. Really early in my career, like the first time I was ever asked to serve on a panel, why anyone would want to hear from me, I was seated on a panel with the science fiction writer David Brin. And for whatever reason, he decided he was just going to go after me for fun. And what he wanted to come after me about was, you horror writers, which I'm not even sure that's what I am or was then, but like, it's all just romantic and atmosphere, and science fiction is the real style because we tell the truth. And we got into it pretty heavily on the panel. And then afterwards, to his credit, he came up laughing and said, not personally, just having fun, thought it would be provocative and noisy and fun for the audience. And okay, I learned something about serving on a panel, I guess, at that point. But
or at least about David Brin.
Great.
or maybe
Exactly.
and I'm not, that I leave that up. But what I do think is that he would very much come down on the style on the side of style means clean, to the point, no fuss. And I actually believe in all that too. And also atmospheric, human, redolent, memorable, and also no fuss and clean.
Yeah.
So again, greedy reader, I guess. I want the whole
It's
thing.
so individual. I mean, if I sat out if you gave 5 authors, if you gave all of us on this panel, basically the plot of Startide Rising and said, go write this book, we would come up with 5 very different things. Mine would probably be a romantic comedy, and so it's, which is part of the other reason I don't think plot is terribly important to a lot of things, because you can give any number of authors the same plot and they will not only each come up with a completely different book based on that plot, some of them will come up with 2 or 3 completely different books. Mm-hmm. And you certainly see this with fairy tale retellings, which I also do. The plot is right there, and yet,
Tracy, do you have thoughts about this?
I'm sort of mulling things over. I was going to say that a big part of style for me would be sort of consistency and unity. I guess I can deal with something that's heavily styled and no fuss, or many needless words, if it's sort of a consistent, unified, engaging voice. And I've definitely read books where it's kind of been all over the place in that regard, where it changes. You're like, why is that changing? But I will say also, for me personally, plot is super important and always will be. I've read heavily stylized novels within the past year, without naming names, that I didn't enjoy, in part because there was so much description and so much overly styled stuff that I would sort of pick up my head in the middle and go, wait, what's happening in the plot? I don't know. You just had a description of an elevator for a chapter and a half, like what's going on. So I guess I would say for me, plot is still crucial, but it also depends on the style. So
I think it is for most readers. Like I think that it's really interesting that a lot of what is currently being celebrated as, quote, literary fiction, for whoever's defining that genre right now. You have a lot of books where stylized interiority is key, right? Like people writing about their thoughts. But when they're selling the book, if you turn over the book jacket, what it gives you is on the night of the tornado where this and this happens, and then you read the book, and that isn't what the book's about. And I'm not necessarily passing judgments, but with you, I think people do still want to be told a story. And again, greedy. I want the interiority and the story and the style, and I want to read it fast and I want to love it. So
You asked so little.
And you would also like a pony.
Yeah.
and I
Story
demand
be
it,
about
and I
it.
want to make that pony myself. Like, yeah.
A question from Andrea in the chat that's very interesting. Do the panelists ever have moments where they struggle to find or keep their voice and style in a piece? And do you have tactics for finding it again? This stuck out to me because I'm in the middle of revising a novel, the style of which is different at the beginning and than it is at the end, and I didn't intend that. I've gone back to the beginning and gone like, oh, okay, this is more sarcastic at the outset than it should be. And it's actually changed as I wrote it because I found a style that was more honed to the story as I was writing it. So sometimes when you lose your style, it's actually that you've honed it more than what you had originally intended. But that is not the only case that you can have with a stylistic shift or losing your verve in the middle. What do you folks think?
I've definitely had the same problem. It's usually when I start the book and I don't quite know the shape of the book yet because I am not an outliner or anything like that. I just get an idea and sit down and start slamming words down. And I will sometimes find myself, a couple thousand words in going, this is not funny. And I know that the book is going to be funny because I am not actually capable of writing long form fiction that does not eventually turn funny. So I should go back and do some tweaking because this is, clearly I got to get I didn't know the character at the outset. I didn't know what they were doing. So their interior monologue is not nearly, sarcastic enough or too sarcastic or something. So I have to go back and readjust because I was wrong about what the style the book would be in or whatever.
I would say for me, that's like a flashing red alarm light on the panel. If I'm sitting there really not feeling the sentences and pushing a metaphor or something like that, it means there's something else wrong in the story. Like I wouldn't say I ever think to myself, most of writing is weirdly unconscious and hard to put into words, obviously, the actual process.
Ironic, isn't it?
Ironically, yes. But I think that for me, it's less that I ever sit there and think, oh dear, my style is off, and more that I'm pushing really hard here, something's not right. And then I have to often what that means for me is going back and starting over.
Yeah, when I write, I don't plan anything either, but I write to discover. And if the discoveries aren't thrilling to me as I go through it in some form or fashion, then I back up to where the last crossroad was and see, which way to go. But it's all about pushing into the fiction. The more you push into it, the more opens up before you, you know what I mean? And I want those discoveries. That's why I don't plan anything, because what I want the reader to feel as in my writing, the sense of discovery I'm feeling when I discover what's in the story next. And when that doesn't pay off after a while, I'm like, wait a second, what happened to the thrill is gone. You know what I mean? I got to back up here, go back and see what I did. And then you usually find it in another direction, at the crossroad, you find it somewhere.
I will say for me, I'm a big fan of what Anne Lamott calls, I think, shitty first drafts. I think she came up with that term. Whenever I'm writing something, I open up what I call the crap file and I just dump everything in there and I just go. And then eventually what happens if I'm having issues with something, I will go through and sort of self-edit and do a line edit by sentence with each sentence and say, what is the sentence doing? What's happening in the sentence? How is it contributing to the story? Is it in the same tone as everything else that I'm writing? So for me, it's like the crap file and then sentence editing. And then I leave it for a while and I come back and I look at it by paragraph, like sort of looking at paragraphs as chunks too, like what's going on in this paragraph, how is it contributing? And then going back into the sentence editing, if that makes any sense.
Love that.
So, yeah.
We have gotten our 5-minute warning. So I'd like to tee up one question from Bob, who has been a prolific asker in the chat. Are there writers whose styles you would identify based on one paragraph, not knowing who it was until you read the paragraph? Because
Kafka.
Yeah.
Kafka, I would. Robert
Hmm.
Louis Stevenson.
Robert Louis Stevenson, my
Yeah.
God, yes.
You
Yeah.
cannot disguise the gossip of Stephen King. I will know that guy.
As long as if
immediately.
somebody's peeing in their pants, it's King. He does that a lot. His characters piss their pants more than the first grade class over at the local grammar school.
And,
I can usually tell humorists, I think, by what kind of joke they make. I like,
Wodehouse.
I've already referenced Wodehouse a bunch of times, but Pratchett, Adams, you can tell if, although with Adams, I will say you can tell if it's either Douglas Adams or someone trying really hard to write like Douglas Adams, which is certainly a thing. So, yeah.
there's no writer who gives himself away in the opening paragraph quite like Douglas Adams, though.
Yes.
Right.
Woodhouse.
Yeah.
I think
Totally.
for me, Woodhouse being the exception. Woodhouse, one sentence, anytime, anywhere you would know. But I think for me, I would say it's more often that I know what book that's from than that I know writer, because I do think writers can change styles. I mean, even someone like McCarthy, who's a very stylized writer, All the Pretty Horses is very different than Blood Meridian, is very different than No Country for Old Men. And I think I would recognize a sentence from any of those books, or a paragraph from any of those books, but they're all him, but they're all different. The Irish writer J.P. Dunleavy comes to mind, just because no one has ever thrown periods into a paragraph in places where he throws them. And anybody, it's dangerous for me to read sometimes because I start doing that and it's not my thing, but he's got the staccato music when he does it. It's really incredible. So I would know him, but that's cheating because it's just the punctuation. It's a giveaway.
I could probably pick Lovecraft out of a lineup or an imitator.
Yeah, if you went to sleep before the end of the sentence.
How many times are we going to use Cyclopean and non-Euclidean? But that's cheating, because
Man,
oh yeah.
What a perfect example, Lovecraft. That guy, if I have to take one more street with Charles Dexter Ward, I'm going to shiv somebody.
So we have about 90 seconds left. I would just like to give all the panelists an opportunity to tell the audience where they can find you, maybe on social media, maybe your website, and what books you've got out or what works you've got out. Start with Glenn.
Okay, I have a new novel and stories called Infinity Dreams coming out from Cemetery Dance next month. You can find me at glenhirschberg.com. I also teach and do manuscript coaching. I run online classes. So that group is called Drones Club West, after the Drones Club in Woodhouse. And so email me at dronesclubwest@outlook.com and or email me on the website and you can find me that way.
All right, Tracy.
Oh, hey, making sure I'm not on mute. So I have a website, not very exciting, it's mostly professional stuff on there, but tracymicah.com, first name and last name.com is where you can find me. I'm not working on anything anybody's going to see anytime soon. I'm working on a manuscript right now, editing a screenwriting manuscript. And when that comes out, I will probably post it up on LinkedIn if anybody wants to follow me there. On Instagram, I'm Popeyes Forever, if anybody wants to follow me on that. So, yeah.
Ursula?
Online, my website is Red Wombat Studio. You can find both the kid and adult stuff. And I'm online on Twitter on Ursula V, and I basically live on Twitter. My next, let's see, I have a book that will probably be coming out next month. And God, I should really think of the title, by which I mean I should come up with the title. But you can pre-order Nettle and Bone, which will be coming out from Tor next year. And yeah.
All right. And Jeff?
I'm on Facebook and Twitter. I'm also on Instagram, but I don't know how the hell to use it. All right. And I have a website, thewellbuiltcity.com. and I have a bunch of stuff up there. And most recent books I mentioned before were Big Dark Hole from Small Beer and Ahab's Return from HarperCollins, which is a couple of years old now.
Awesome. And I've been your moderator. You can find me at myname.com, johnwiswell.com. Not myname.com. I don't think I have that URL, but johnwiswell.com. I'm on Twitter just at Wiswell, and like Ursula, I spend too much time there. But it's funny sometimes.
I saw the book there once.
Boom.
Way to be.
Yeah. Sometimes a tweet thread turns into a movie deal. Who can say? And you can find, I'm going to be in We're Here, the best queer fiction of 2020, which is coming out next month. You can pre-order it right now in the Neon Hemlock channel and this very Discord. And my novelette, That Story Is Not the Story, will be out in the November-December Uncanny Magazine. And with that, thank you all so much, both
Thank
to
you,
my
John.
panelists
Thanks,
and to the
everybody.
audience.
Yeah.
Super fun. Thanks, you guys.